Have you noticed how when Solomon writes these, it's repetition?
We're going to talk about that.
Over and over again,
We're going to talk about that.
But slightly different, you know? People back then didn't have God's Word they could carry under their arms, carry into the temple, or carry into worship. So I think, personally, he taught that way, and that teaching style to help people catch it and to remember it so they can take it away with them.
I agree with that.
I'm sorry.
You don't have nothing to be sorry for.
Okay, very good.
All right. Last week, again, we were looking at a couple things that we dealt with, but the main thing that we dealt with, again, was our speech that have so much been talking about in the last few months, the last few weeks. We know that all through the book of Proverbs, and we'll run into it again, I know quite a few more times, about the way we speak, the way we talk to each other, the way we conduct ourselves every day. And again, like Brother Gary said, he keeps repeating himself over and over and over again. And Gary, I believe that's one of the reasons why as well. But I also believe that one of the other reasons is because he's warning us and reminding us, because that's how important it is when we see something repeated over and over and over again like that. Obviously, it's something that he's trying to get across to us, something that he's trying to drill into our heads, and that we should not forget. And I think our speech is something that, that's pretty high up on the list. Because we can certainly, as we've talked about, certainly hurt our testimony, certainly hurt our brother and our sisters by something we say. And you've heard me say it over and over again. Once you say it, it's hard to take it back. And you can apologize until you're blue in the face, but once you've said it, you've said it. And words can be hurtful. So Solomon was just warning us once again about our speech. But let's move on. Tonight we're going to look in Proverbs chapter 13, and we're going to go as far as we can get tonight, and probably get 3 or 4 or 5 verses maybe. But let's look at verse 4, and let's read down through about verse 8. I don't know if we'll get any further than that tonight, but it says, "The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. A righteous man hateth lying, but a wicked man is loathsome and cometh to shame. Righteousness keepeth him that is upright in their way, but wickedness overthroweth the sinner. There is that maketh himself rich, yet hath nothing. There is that maketh himself poor, yet hath great riches. The ransom of a man's life are his riches, but the poor heareth not rebuke." Let's go back and pick up verse number 4 tonight, and tonight it won't be any different than any other night. This is a good crowd tonight, so we ought to have a lot of different opinions, a lot of different things you might want to add or say something about a verse, and I welcome that, because just like you can teach me just as much as I can teach anybody. So I welcome any and all feedback. So if anybody has anything on any of these verses tonight, please just feel free to speak, raise your hand or whatever, and I'd like to hear what you have to say. Verse number 4, we'll go back to it. If I can find my glasses, it says, "The soul of the sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat." We've already seen a few times already back in the previous chapters of this wonderful book of Proverbs, that Solomon talks about the sluggard, or Solomon, he's referring to lazy people. It says here that they desire and have nothing. And I just, myself, when I read that, the first thing that jumped out to my mind was they desire, but they don't have it. Why don't they have it? Because they're too lazy to work for it to go get it. And that was the first thing that went through my mind. And but what I think it's they just want things handed to them. Basically, is what he's trying to say there. They don't want to work for it. They just want it handed to them. But it also, in that verse, it also talks about the diligent man. The diligent man is the one that goes out and earns an honest day's work, or he goes out and works for whatever it is that he wants or whatever it is that he needs. He's the one that's not afraid to work overtime. He's the one that's not afraid to get his hands dirty. He's the one that knows what it means to be able to provide for his family, for his children. The diligent man. He's the one that's not always sitting around doing nothing. He's the one that's the go-getter, and the one that's always out there doing all that he can. And I hope this doesn't offend anybody tonight, but this is something that has bothered me for years when we're talking about the sluggard or talking about the lazy person. And now, and before I say this, and before I like I said, I'm not here to offend anybody or say anything hurtful or offensive against anybody. But and I know that there's exceptions to this, but for the most part, I don't know about you, but I always seem to get a little bit uneasy, maybe is the right word to use, when I see these people standing all over Parkersburg and all over Vienna wanting handouts at every stoplight and everywhere you go. You know, every traffic light. I think our city is just being overrun by them. I'm starting to see them in places that I've never seen them in before, and why they're in different places is because there's so many of them that they have to find new places to stand. And I know there's some, there's reasons for everything and reasons for them doing that. But for the most part, I believe a lot of them should be out there working. And I'll be honest with you, I've stopped a couple of them a few times, and I've rolled the window down and come over and asked him what I could do to help him. And he said, we need some money. And I said, well, your sign says you'll work for it. I said, I've got some things that need to be done. Would you like to come out and do some work for me, and I'll pay you an honest day's wages? And, I've done that probably, I can think of 3 times, but probably more. But 2 of the times that I've said that, asked them to come help me do some stuff around the house, mow grass, cut some branches and things like that, rake some leaves, the response is I can earn more money just standing here doing nothing. And that's exactly what they say. I can, how much will you pay me? I'll pay you $10 an hour. How many hours? As long as it takes. Well, I can earn more money in a day just standing around here doing nothing. And that bothers me. And I won't. I just won't hand money out the window to them anymore. Just simply for that reason. And I agree with what the Bible says over in 2 Thessalonians. It basically says if man don't work, man don't eat. And I truly hate it. I feel bad when I drive by them and I don't give them. But I was one of these places in town. I was pulling up to a stoplight, and there was 4 people standing there wanting handouts, and 2 of them were standing there, and the other 2 were sitting up on a step. And it was kind of like, well, when you leave, I'm going to go over here and take it and take this spot. But it's amazing to me that that they don't want to work for it, and it's the same thing I believe is what the Bible says. That we ought to be able to go out, we ought to be able to earn, that which we are needing. Yes, Connie. Yep. There was a guy. It's been several years ago, and I believe he was really legit. I pulled off and talked to him for a few minutes, and I said, first thing that went through my mind, he asked me for money, and first thing that went through my mind was, I know what he's going to use it for, and I'm not going to give him money. And I asked him, I said, well, let me tell you what, you got family? And he told me, yeah, he had a wife and 3 kids, and so I said, well, here's what I want you to do. I said, I won't give you money, but I'll take you down and I'll feed you, just to see what he said. And believe it or not, he took me up on the offer. His family was sitting just down the road a little ways under a shade tree. And I went down and picked him up and took him over to Napoli's, and we had pizza and subs and stuff, and we sat there and talked for a little bit. But that guy, I truly believe, was legit. He was just down on his luck. And but there's a lot of people out here that's not like that, and they'll take a handout before they'll do anything. And there was and I've told some of you this. There was a guy that used to come in this church. I ain't seen him for a while. It's probably been 3 months better. But he used to come in the church. He knew I was here, and he would even come in during service time sometimes and wait for me. And he would come in and he'd say, man, I need $2. I got to get on the bus, and I got to go here, go there, and pay this and pay that. And he probably did that a dozen times, and I'd give him $2 every time. And I was thinking, what's the harm? It's just $2. If he really needs a bus ride, I'll pay for his bus ride. But one day I just was curious to see what he was doing with that $2, and so I gave him $2, and I followed him around town a little bit, and he went over to Walmart, and I watched him in the parking lot for a little bit, and he was going around, and it was just doing it to ladies. He would go around, and he would see a lady pushing a buggy out to a car. He would go out and put her bag, try to put the groceries in the car, and he would hit her up for some money. And finally he went in the store, and I kind of just wanted to see what he was going in the store for. So I went in and just kind of tried to find him around in there, but I couldn't find him anywhere. But I know he saw me, and it's kind of funny. He hadn't been back since he saw me follow him around. And I know what he was using the money for, but that just kind of made me think, that guy, he's capable of working. And and I believe that's what the Bible is referring to when he's talking about the sluggard. He's talking about the lazy man. And I'm just under the old rule that if you're able to work, then you should work for what you need, for what you need to get by. And I understand that there's people who have health issues and things like that. But that's different. They, for whatever reason, they can't do that, and I understand that. And I'm trying my best as a parent to teach my kids the importance of a hard day's work or an honest day's work, and I try to teach them here lately, if you want something, you need to work for it, save your money, and go get it. Yes, Rick?
I think part of this is really accentuated when they got away from the church and went to the government, which is rather if the government took over and really forced the church out of the process. And now they made the people dependent on them rather than what they should do.
Right.
And to the Lord for the systems.
Yep. God will provide. Always has. But I was teaching my kids that, that the same thing about, an honest day's work, and they're both doing pretty good. I'm not saying that, that I'm bragging on them or anything like that, but I've been trying to instill that in them, and it took a little while for it to sink into Madison. I'll tell you a real quick funny story about her, and her first job. I think she just worked one day a week over where she's at now, at a little restaurant in Belpre where her and Abby both work. And it was kind of funny. Her boss told her to come in and work 10 to 2. And so it was Saturday morning, and I went in to wake her up. It was about a little after 9, and she had to be there at 10. I said, Maddie, you better get up. You have to go to work. And she goes, Dad, I don't have to be there till 10 till 2. And when she first realized that, no, he meant you have to work from 10 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, she went, oh, really? So, but she's doing really well now. She's working 5 and 6 days a week, and Abby's working a couple days a week, and I can't remember, I'll buy something for Abby, and but she always pays me back out of her check when she gets it and things like that. And that's the way it should be. If we want something, I really believe that the Bible says a diligent, we should be diligent and not a sluggard person. So, anybody else have anything to add on that verse? All right, let's move on to verse number 5. Verse 5 says, "A righteous man hateth lying, but a wicked man is loathsome and cometh to shame." Anybody have anything they want to offer on that verse before we get into it? We dealt with this also another time or two. In fact, I think it was just a few weeks ago we talked about it. I can't remember exactly. I think it was back in chapter 6 actually, but maybe again later than that. But we addressed this issue of lying a while back in this particular book. And you know, I don't know about you, and I probably said it then, and I'll say it again. There's nothing I hate more than somebody that lies to me all the time. And can I say this? God hates a lying tongue as well. In fact, God hates it so much that He spoke of it very, very blatantly and very vividly in the book of Revelation, chapter number 21, verse number 8. This is what God thinks. This is what God thinks of liars. It says, "But the fearful and unbelieving," this is found in Revelation 21 and verse number 8, "But the fearful and unbelieving and the abominable and murderers and whoremongers and sorcerers and idolaters," and this one right here, "and all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone, which is the second death." So Solomon here is telling us, warning us again about our tongue, about making sure that when we say something, we say the truth and we don't speak lies. It's so important that, and God hates it so much. We just read what God thinks about liars. That's how serious God is about a lying tongue. And as parents, those of us who are raising children need to make sure that we put that in our children's minds. We let our children know the importance at an early age of telling the truth and not lying, because we just found out what God thinks about it. And I believe that we need to deal with it early. I think we need to deal with it sternly with our children and get that in their head that it's not okay, no matter how big or how small the lie may be. We need to make sure they understand that lying is wrong and lying is a serious thing. And I think we need to teach them early. I think we need to teach them now before they grow up and become adults, and before they're at the age where they think that it's okay. And nobody likes a liar. If I were to ask for hands in the auditorium tonight of those who like people that lied all the time, there shouldn't be any hands that go up. I can't stand it when somebody lies to me. And I don't know about you, but I would hate to have to live with that reputation of being known as a liar. But sadly to say, there are people that's what they're known for. You know people like that. I know people like that. When I coached volleyball several years ago, and I thought of this today, there was a lady whose daughter played on the team. And it was my first year being a coach in the public school system, and I didn't know the kids that well. But there was a lady, a mom, she had a daughter on the team, and she would come up to me almost every day and tell me a lie about another kid on the team. And I wasn't around the schools all day long to know or didn't know these kids. And so my first reaction was, because I always believed this lady, was to go to the parent or go to the kid and ask them, "I heard you did this. Did you do this? Did you not do this? Why did you do this? If you do this again, this will happen. You won't be a part of my team," and on and on and on. Well, come to find out, everything for about 2 months solid, that this lady, and the kids that I had always approached, and the parents would always tell me no, they'd never heard of her. The kid would say they'd never done it, and things like that. But I was always believed the mom, because she was the adult, she was the mature one, and I always expected these kids, 6th, 7th grade kids, to lie to me, and I expected that. But it turned out in the end that it was the mom that was the one that was lying. Just about everything she said about another kid or something was a lie. And I finally figured out, and Jeff, you may have run into this a time or two, but the reason that she was doing it is because she wanted me to think bad of these other kids, so that her kid would be the one that was the captain of the team. Her kid would be assured of a starting position, or would even be able, to make the team after cuts and all that. And I finally was smart enough to figure that out, but it took a little while. And for me, once I figured that out, I felt really bad because I didn't really put my trust in what the kids were telling me. I put my trust in somebody that was a consistent liar. And and she has that reputation with me now. And even still, this has been 8-9 years ago. Even now, if I see her out in public and she comes around and she starts talking to me, it's still, I don't know if she's telling the truth or not. It's still hard for me to believe, anything she tells me. And usually if I see her out and she comes over and tries to talk to me, I'll stand there and talk to her. But usually I just let it go in one ear and right out the other, because that's just the type of reputation that she has, not just with me. I'm sure that she wasn't just telling me some of these things. I'm sure she was telling other people that, and I'm sure she has that kind of reputation now with a lot of people. And I would hate to go through life having a reputation of a liar, having the reputation that no matter what I said, whether it's just like the boy that cried wolf all the time, and eventually that's going to catch up with us in the end if we're a type of person that lies and never speaks the truth at all. And we've seen this. Solomon talking about this in other verses of the Bible, but back in Proverbs chapter number 6 and verse 16 and 17, here's what he says. He says, "These 6 things doth the Lord hate, yea, 7 are an abomination unto him." And he goes in and names these 7 things. In verse 17, he tells us that he hates a proud look and a lying tongue. A lying tongue is an abomination unto the Lord. So we need to be careful when we speak. We need to make sure that we're being honest. We need to make sure that we're not telling lies, because eventually it's going to come out, and you're going to have that reputation of somebody that cannot be trusted. Anybody else have anything to add on that verse? All right, let's get one more verse. It's pushing 8 o'clock here, and we got a business meeting. Verse number 6. "Righteousness keepeth him that is upright in the way, but wickedness overthroweth the sinner." Now we all know what a righteous man is. Anybody have anything to say before we dig into that verse a little bit? Ain't had much tonight. Somebody's got to have something. Gary, anything on that?
Righteousness is a God, the way we live our lives.
Yep.
And if you're not righteous, then you're headed for a problem.
Yep. Righteous man is upright in his ways. He journeys through life doing what is right in the eyes of God each and every day of his life. And when we do that, when we're seeking to live and doing the things that we should, living for God every day of our life, God will honor us for that. God will honor us by keeping us from all the troubles, by keeping us from all the destruction that He brings upon the ones that aren't diligent, the ones that aren't righteous, the ones that do not live for God. So we need to remember that it says righteousness. Let me get back. Righteousness keepeth him that is upright in the way. If we want, yes, Margie.
Kind of reminds me of when Carol Mark came and played at the nursing home Sunday, and the people that just loved him. And there was one lady there that's she just sits like this and just doesn't even say a word. I've never heard her speak. And when Mark was singing, she was mouthing every word that he was singing. And to me, this righteousness keepeth you in an upright way. No matter what, Mom don't remember my name, but she can sing Rock of Ages. And these people that have God in their heart, that are truly righteous, no matter what way they are in, they really have this love. This can show. It can come out from the best of ways sometimes.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just like he says in this verse, righteousness will keepeth him that is upright in the way. In other words, I think what he's trying to tell us there, we just need to remember that we need to live a righteous life. If we live a righteous life, if we're constantly trying and living for God and seeking those things which are above and setting our affections on those things which are above and trying our best each and every day of our life to live for God, no matter where we are, no matter who we're with, no matter the circumstance, no matter the situation, no matter the storm we're going through. But if we're constantly seeking God's face, if we're constantly seeking God's will for our lives, and we're truly walking and living for Christ, it'll come out in us. People will notice that, and God will keep us in His will. God will keep us safe. God will keep us from those things which the ones that don't live that way, the things that He brings in the lives of the unbelieving. And I believe that's what He's telling us there, that if we just live righteous, He'll take care of us. I believe is what He's saying. Anybody else have anything tonight on that verse?
We're just kind of working along these very things this week in our study of the armor of God. And there was one of the little question things that you put in that kind of brought this to my mind, that the Spirit will impart wisdom as we implement righteousness to others. So it's imputed unto us.
That's right. Good thought. Yes, Gary.
I kind of think of that as when you see these people like in Chicago, different areas, like the other day, a guy got shot by 2 policemen, and then they brought out kind of like the white person is just looking for, they don't do things like that. The other night, just something like happens, they loot stores and do things, and the wicked come just all along. They had no, they're just there, and all of a sudden, hey, I've got an opportunity to do things. I mean, that's all kind of, look at it, and look at their deaths.
You never see, well,
A righteous person doing it.
right.
The sinners are in there getting what they can, walking and doing what they can. Things that aren't fair.
Yep. Anybody else? Deep verses tonight. A couple of those were really good. We just need to remember some things. If you're taking notes and keeping notes in Proverbs, I think what the main thought tonight was on our, again, on our, not necessarily on our speech, but we just need to make sure that when we're saying something, no matter how much it hurts us, we always need to tell the truth. We always need to be honest. We always need to be, no matter the situation, no matter, and I told one of my kids this not too long ago. Abby was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but we were talking about something about work, and I said, she said I could have said this to my boss, Dad, but I told him this, and I said, that'll go a long way, with your boss, because if you lie to your boss, he'll never believe, how can he believe anything that you say? And, you'll get on his bad side. And eventually your hours will start getting cut and things like that. So you need to always make sure you tell him the truth, no matter if you mess an order up or how big or how small it is. You always need to take responsibility for it. Don't try to lie to him. Just make sure you tell him the truth, because it'll work out better for you in the end. You may not at that particular time, but in the end it'll work out better for you than it would if you told him a lie. So, all right. Well, we'll be dismissed.